With 8 Republicans facing off in Milwaukee last night, that was the first presidential debate of the primary season, notably absent, of course, current GOP frontrunner, former President Donald Trump. I guess you would call it a somewhat chaotic evening. So to help us make sense of it all, we've got John Dickerson here. John, thank you very much for joining us. Okay, so just launch, man. Big takeaways.
It was a good night for Donald Trump. For a couple of reasons. One, there was no challenger that emerged. The field is still roughly sorting itself out. Every day that it sorts itself out, that's better for him because he's the front runner by such a wide margin in the polls and by everything our reporting tells us. And that doesn't just mean that nobody laid a glove on him. It also means that nobody really had a moment where a voter in Iowa could say, you know, I love Trump, but boy, I was really interested in this. The candidates didn't really give those voters this. But the other thing that struck me about that debate is it felt like a job interview in which there is already an internal candidate. In other words, the interviews take place, all the motions are gone through, but the person's already been picked. And in that case, it was Donald Trump's turf, not just because the moderators were very delicate and almost apologetic about raising any of the issues related to his presidency, but also the audience, when anything was said that seemed anti-Trump, they booed the person who said it.
Yes.
That is a self-reinforcing process that keeps Donald Trump in the high position he has.
Yeah, outside of Donald Trump, did anyone else have a decent night, a good night? Was there anybody else you thought, maybe you should sit down?
There were some...
maybe you should yell, check, please.
Doug Burgum's doctor.
I will lift...
I'm sure it's too early to tell.
I'll focus on those who did strongly and let the criticism to others. But in a different Republican Party, in the Republican Party I started covering in the early 90s, some of Governor Nikki Haley's responses, her defense on Ukraine, very strong. Her pragmatic approach to abortion, which is complicated. The abortion discussion was actually a real debate about what role does the federal government play, what role does the state play, what role does consensus play, what role as a moral leader, the point Mike Pence was making, play in getting an issue like this through. That was a real conversation. And so Pence and Haley had good moments, and even Chris Christie made an argument for intervening in Ukraine based on the moral position about what Russia is doing. That again, in a different Republican Party, would have been thunderous applause.
John, Vivek Ramaswamy, he spoke with conviction. He's not afraid to take a hard stance on some hot button topics. But does that equal a win in the eyes of Republican voters?
Well, there are some Republican voters who love that brand, and he is not well known. So if you're the person a lot of other people are attacking, that's good for you at this stage in the primary, because people
Some say
are like,
that's a Trump-like brand.
Sure, it is, except the problem with that is all you're doing is creating an appetite for the guy who's already leading by 40 points in the polls.
That's a good point.
I think so this, for a young politician trying to rise, that might be
a good strategy.
A good strategy. But I think also for some Republicans, it might be a little too cute by half to criticize the others for pre-canned lines while you mint pre-canned lined one after the other, after the other, after the other. It may have a ceiling.
Governor
they keep saying that they want to move on when it comes to Donald Trump. Everybody tippy-toes, with the exception of Chris Christie, who goes hard. Even Nikki Haley said, listen, if I get the nomination, I'm pardoning him. And I think for many people, it's hard to go there because when you haven't been held accountable, many people believe Donald Trump has not been held accountable. He's got 4 indictments. We all understand that. He's out on bail. But still, so many believe he hasn't been held accountable, and he's still doing very well. How do you move on, some say, if you haven't been... Even this interview yesterday, he called January 6th, there was love and unity in the air. I've never seen such spirit and passion and such love.
Well, you have 2 issues, I think. One is, if he's convicted, 6 of 8 people on that stage said they would still vote for him as president. Think of the things he's
even
being
if
charged
convicted
with. That means you essentially don't believe in the American judicial system, because if he's convicted, it could be things like obstructing justice, other big, serious crimes. So that is one problem. But the other one is more important, I think. Donald Trump is asking to be rewarded for his behavior with a second term, with 4 more years. That's why this isn't about the past. The behavior in office. Let's forget everything happening in these 4 indictments. Just what Donald Trump said and did in public should be a subject for debate. And finally, what he believes now. He still believes the election was stolen. Given all the evidence, all the court cases he's lost, all the investigations that have not found that to be the case, it means he is operating under a delusion. Do you want to give somebody that much power who cannot be moved from the delusion they believe in, that seems to me to be a reasonable thing to talk about in a presidential race.
No doubt about it. Well said, John
Chief
Dickerson.
political analyst.